Jesus has got no hard feelings about the revolution, and we're extracting the last rider for some Super 8 action. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Offscreen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Groovy.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Right, we've got 5 brand new movies to talk about this time round. We're going to start with a true story, Jesus Revolution.
Yeah, surprisingly, this does not actually involve Jesus directly, because I did think this was some sort of biopic. I thought this was going to be like a Roman set thing with Jesus leading a revolution. No, not at all. Instead, this stars Kelsey Grammer, because all good things in life star Kelsey Grammer for some reason. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kelsey Grammer is in one of the Transformers movies, isn't he? Am I misremembering that? Is there one of the Transformers movies? He is. Okay. I was watching this movie thinking, I'm sure he was in a Transformers movie. But
yeah, it was the second one, wasn't it?
Second or third? One of them. He's in one of them, isn't he?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So, this has nothing to do with Transformers. That's apropos of nothing. I had to ask. I know you've seen those movies more recently than I have. So, this is based on the true story of Greg Laurie, who is also a co-writer on this movie. He was a young man who happens to sort of find himself in the middle of a transitionary period in California in the 1970s, when, through the involvement of hippies and the church, we get the sort of birth of Christian evangelism. You know, what's going to lead the way to televangelism, and all through the prism of, what's his name? Lonnie, his name was Lonnie Frisbee. That was it. I knew he had a really silly name. Lonnie Frisbee, who was one of the sort of figureheads of this, would get drummed out. It's not in the movie, but he would get drummed out of the church years later because he was outed as gay. And funnily enough, not a thing they bring up in the film. But also, you've then got Kelsey Grammer as Chuck Smith, the infamous pastor as well. And it is about how all these forces come together and give birth to, say, the rise of Christian evangelism. Have a listen. This is Lonnie Frisbee meeting the pastor Chuck Smith for the first time. This is the hippie and the old stick-in-the-mud pastor.
Jeanette tells me you're a pastor.
Yes. Currently.
I know we must seem pretty strange. But if you look a little deeper, if you look with love, you'll see a bunch of kids that are searching for all the right things, just in all the wrong places. So to answer your question, how do I describe my people? They're sheep without a shepherd.
The start of that just made me chuckle slightly with his accent, saying pastor. He said pasta. Like, yeah, I'm Frizzolini.
Frizz, definitely. The Frisbee-lini, I think we'll say. Lonnie Frisbee-lini will go in this case.
Yeah, I'm guessing from what you've said and from the tone of that clip, this is quite a spiritual movie to watch. Quite deep.
I mean, it may well be. It's also bloody boring. I mean, 2 hours long. I mean, by the end of it, I was praying for it to be over. It's so dull. Like, there's no story here. There really is not a story here. I mean, in the wider historical context, there obviously is. But what they've gone with for this movie, like I said, they've lopped out the bits where this actually gets interesting, like Lonnie Frisbee actually getting ousted from the church for his sexuality, things like that. You know, that would be a more interesting story than this absolute bilge. I will say, and this is one of the only times I ever get to say this, Kelsey Grammer actually really going for it here. Like, actually, this is a pretty decent turn from Frasier. Like, he's doing because obviously, you know, we mock Kelsey Grammer because outside of Frasier, he's rubbish. He's always rubbish. You know, I mean, the most interesting or amusing that Kelsey Grammer has ever been outside of Frasier was that time he dumped his wife on her own reality TV show, which was one of the Real Housewives ones, where he literally phoned and divorced his wife in the middle of filming, which I still think is just one of the great viral clips of our age.
Yep.
I don't know if that was the one that starred Denise Richards. So the only one I ever watched for ... reasons. But yeah, Kelsey Grammer, best thing about this. And if Kelsey Grammer is the best thing about your movie, odds are it sucks. And yeah, this absolutely sucks. It's trying for that soft focus, you know, lens flare, Christian pure flicks kind of aesthetic. And Yeah, they get it, but that's not really hard to reach. You can shoot, everyone shoots for it. It's not that hard to reach. The thing is, you need the material to back it up, and this really is just an endless string of boring ass scenes of a bunch of hippies sat around a church being preached at, which does not a good movie make. I kind of preferred my idea about, actual Jesus leading the revolution. It would kind of been more interesting. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a movie here.
What kind of person would like this then?
A cripplingly dull one. I genuinely can't think, unless you actually were like a devout, like evangelistic person, like a really dyed-in-the-wool Christian, in which case you wouldn't really be listening to this show in the first place, to be honest, because I catch flames if I walk through a church. But unless you are that kind of person who's really, really into their faith, I can't really. And then again, you'd have to have the self-awareness to be kind of. Yeah, no, I can't see who the audience for this is, outside of it just being dumped on like an actual dedicated Christian film streaming service, which I think PureFlix must own at this point. Like PureFlix must have one, surely by now. In fact, there is one. I'm sure there is. I did know the name at one point because they tried to sponsor us at one point. But we do draw the line. We have some principles. Okay, we have some. Okay, HelloFresh. We'll go with HelloFresh, but we're not going with the Christian streamers. And you know what I mean. Other than dumping it there, no, I can't really think who the hell this is. But if you paid money to see this, like on a punt at the multiplex, you go racing from the screen to like beg the box office for your money back. Like,
I was about to say, I wonder why they've put this into cinemas. There's something so niche.
It's kind of a quiet week this week. I mean, the two big hitters this week, obviously we're not reviewing one of them because I didn't get to the Wes Anderson screening, but the only other big hitter is the R-rated Jennifer Lawrence comedy, which could not be further in the opposite direction of this if it tried. And we'll get to that next, believe me. But no, this is absolute bilge. I mean, I was just bored to tears with it. Now, in the lead here, playing Greg Laurie, you've got Joel Courtney. You've got Jonathan Rumi as Lonnie Frisbee in there as well. And the problem is, I will say, it probably is quite close to the archetype of the actual Lonnie Frisbee in that he's quite drippy and nauseating. But Joel Courtney, not a particularly memorable lead. Very generic, very sort of sub. Who's the guy that they always... that Vincent Chase is so clearly based on from Speed Racer, and the girl next door, the actor who's really drippy actor, one of those. Like I say, very very generic guy, so generic I can't remember his name. You know, what I
was going to say that, yeah. Just I would say honestly, avoid this. You would be bored to tears. Like I say, anyone who's listening to this show is obviously not going to be the demographic anyway, but. Yeah, no. I say it's called Jesus Revolution. It is neither revolutionary nor holy in any way. Avoid it like the plague. Well, if you do want to make your own mind up, you are welcome, because Jesus Revolution is in cinemas from today.
God help you.
Something in a minute with Jennifer Lawrence in. We're going to talk about No Hard Feelings. We'll see what Van thought of that in just a bit. Stay where you are. Hello and welcome back to the show. Right, we've got No Hard Feelings to talk about right now. And as I mentioned a moment ago, this has got Jennifer Lawrence in. So I'm sure you enjoyed this movie to a point, Van.
To a point? I mean, okay, so first of all, it doesn't just have Jennifer Lawrence in. This, sir, also has Matthew Broderick in it, which is always a cause of celebration. Actually, with note, he turns up here looking so weirdly new age / middle aged that I had to text my friend Simon Hooper and ask if he could actually sue Matthew Broderick for stealing his look, or if it just fell under fair usage. Which I don't think he did send me some laughy emojis, but I don't think he found that funny. Right, so. New comedy from Gene Stupnitsky, who directed Good Boys a couple of years ago. Do you remember the one about the three, 12, 13-year-old boys? They were like 12 or 13 years on, they go on sort of it was super bad for tweens a couple of years ago. It was written by Seth Rogen. I do.
Yeah, I saw the trailer.
This is his sort of follow-up to that. It stars Jennifer Lawrence as Maddie, a 31-year-old, not so much a slacker, but she's sort of a gig economy worker. because that is how old Jennifer Lawrence is now. Let's forget. Jennifer Lawrence is now about 31. She's sort of a gig economy worker. She works in a sort of seaside town, Montauk, in upstate New York, which is like a port town, where the rich people come for the summer to go on their yachts and live in their country house, their vacation homes, and then they sod off for the rest of the year, and the town goes to ruin. And the idea is that that the people of Montauk kind of just prefer it when these people aren't around, even though their local economy relies on the tourism. Right. She makes her living working at the local sort of marina bar / working as an Uber driver. One day, her car is impounded. For not paying her bills, etc. Her car is impounded, so she's unable to make ends meet. She finds a job ad, the details of which are in the clip, and I'm going to have to tell you one. I can't really cue it up. She finds an ad in a local job listing that basically asks her to pose as the girlfriend of a sort of young, nerdish, inexperienced 19-year, and that's very specific, 19-year-old boy. Ooh. Before he goes off to college, because his helicopter parents want to get him out of his shell. Okay? That's the setup. I'm just going to pass it over to the clip before I start going any further on this one. So this is Jennifer Lawrence and her mates getting the job listing.
Need a car for college, date our 19-year-old son this summer.
We're looking for an attractive, kind, and intelligent woman, early to mid-20s.
In exchange, we'll give you a Buick Regal, clean, rust-free, 40K miles.
Date is in quotes.
You're actually considering this.
I've had a one-night stand before and gotten 0 Buick Regals for it.
I had sex once because I didn't want to commute in the morning.
I've had sex with a guy once to get out of playing Settlers of Catan.
I had sex with a guy once on a first date because I thought he was going to kill me.
Jesus. You're with me now, babe.
She's talking about you, dumbass.
Wow. I wish my parents had done that for me when I was 19.
Right. Now, that's the weird thing. Okay, so this is an R-rated comedy. Now, that's a reason to celebrate in and of itself, because the idea of a mid-budget studio R-rated comedy is such a rarity nowadays. Like, we don't really see them. Like, even Seth Rogen's not really making them anymore. People like that were kind of the mainstay of this. And then you've the idea that someone like Jennifer Lawrence is making one. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of notable. Now, and on the Jennifer Lawrence side of this, she's very clearly going for that Cameron Diaz in Bad Teacher kind of shtick.
Right.
Very obvious that seems to be the influence here. Now, Jennifer Lawrence does not, however, have the likability that Cameron Diaz had in Bad Teacher. You know what I mean? Like, Cameron Diaz could get away with an awful lot because there is sort of an innate likability to it. Jennifer Lawrence doesn't have that. So what you get is a character who really just comes across as quite unlikable and hostile all the time. You've then got the young man himself, I think it's Andrew Barth Feldman, as the, I'm going to say again, 19-year-old character. I'm going to get to why that's significant in a moment as well, finally. Who really doesn't have much to work with, because the character seems to flip-flop between being a very generic Gen Z archetype. Like, oh, I'm the writer of this movie. I have a Gen Z kid. Aren't they really into their Warcraft and their video game walkthroughs on YouTube? They all like anime. Ooh, it's one of those. Like, on the one hand, you have that, and on the other hand, you just have, look, I'm just an avatar for a 40-year-old screenwriter. And it kind of flip-flops. Then you've got a story that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Now, it's very, very obvious, both from the marketing and just from watching the movie, that this had been conceived of in the sense that he was underage, that the character is underage. Like, this has been sort of positioned as risky business for the next generation. Like, it is sort of that risky business meets failure to launch. That kind of a hybrid. They constantly bring up the fact that this kid is like a boy genius, for instance, but he's going to college 2 years after the US national average. And that's the only way that they can make the story not problematic. You know what I mean? Like, in order for it to literally not be a sex crime, for it not to be statutory rape, they have to invalidate their own sort of character arc, in a sense. There's a couple of laughs in there, but it all gets really undone by a story that just proves quite infuriating, that just proves quite nonsensical. There's no conflict to it, for instance. So, for instance, you would assume from the setup I gave you, like I've told you, for instance, that she's 31 and that he's 19. Now,
in the extended version of that clip, they do have an elongated conversation about, oh, well, you know, are you not going to be too old for him? And she's like, well, you know, I could pass for younger. So you assume, okay, they're going to do this whole thing where she pretends to be younger and that's going to be the gag. Okay, fair enough. I could see that working in a Hollywood comedy. It's Jennifer Lawrence. Fair enough. I could see Jennifer Lawrence maybe potentially passing for being like college age. Cool. That makes complete sense. You know, or, you know, they don't do that. They just come straight out with, there's no mystery to this. They just come straight out with it. There's very little conflict in the movie. And it's kind of hard to go with the R-rated sex comedy side of this when there is no conflict. There's no forward thrust to any of this. I mean, at one point in the story, the idea that she's doing this all for the car kind of just gets forgotten about and then just gets brought up on a whim. Like, oh, by the way, can I have that car? I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, oh, yeah, I forgot that's why we were doing all this. Yeah, because there's so little actual plot to it that, okay. And it then just becomes, you know, an hour and 45 minutes of watching Jennifer Lawrence just try to get into a teenage boy's pants, which really isn't the most compelling narrative for a comedy in the 21st century. There's also in the middle of it, and I was at Sony watching this, right? I got into the lift afterwards with Kermode. We were going out to reception, and on our way to Indiana Jones, and he asked me, and he asked me, and I was as equally baffled as he was. He said, "What was with that really weird, really graphic nude fight scene?" And my immediate response was, "Yeah, right. That is odd, isn't it? There is an entire sequence in this movie in which, and I presume that they did this just to get the R rating for it, in which a fully nude, fully exposed Jennifer Lawrence beats the crap out of 3 teenagers." And
what?
Yeah. Your reaction is literally kind of what we had going on, both in the screen and after the movie. We could not make heads of like, why is that in there? Every person I ran into for the following 2 days, who when this movie came up in conversation, the very first thing they asked was, what was with that nude fight scene? Like, it's really odd, isn't it? And it is. It's really, really odd, and it's turned into a clickbait article throughout the week. Like, there's like, I know BuzzFeed and Joe and like outlets like that are running pieces on this. Oh, Jennifer Lawrence has a graphic nude fight scene. Like, yeah, I know, and believe me, it's the only thing that's memorable about the movie because you're not going to remember much about this outside of that, and maybe Matthew Broderick's very weird hairdo, but. Yeah, it's a very strange, very unfulfilling, and largely unsuccessful attempt at a comedy that seems to have its R rating entirely because of a number of F-bombs and this weird nude fight scene. And to be honest with you might as well just wait for that scene to be leaked on, because, I mean, the movie came out, we record this on Thursday, obviously. The movie came out today in UK cinemas, on Thursday, the 22nd. It came out today. So I'd imagine that scene's been leaked onto TikTok by now. Honestly, just watch the leaked footage on TikTok and skip the movie, because, wow, it's a very, very odd film. Not particularly, there's a couple of laughs, but there's no belly lash. You know, you're not going to be chortling yourself senseless of this or anything like that. And it's certainly not up to the level of, you know, it's not up to the level of Booksmart. It's not up to the level of Superbad. It's not up to the level of your average Seth Rogen comedy or anything like that. It just feels like the former star of the Hunger Games series really wanted some of that Cameron Diaz money. She really wanted to get out of the I only do David O. Russell Oscar bait dramas, you know, archetype, and it doesn't work. It doesn't. To be honest with you, I would give this one a hard pass. No hard feelings, but there is a hard pass from me.
Well, there you go. If you do want to go and see it in the cinema, it is out from today. No, it's from yesterday.
From yesterday, by the time this comes out, yeah.
Yeah, we're recording on a Thursday. But we're going to do 2 new movies back to back in a moment. We're going to look at The Last Rider and The Super 8 Years as well. We'll see what Van thought of both of those in just a moment. Hello and welcome back to the show. Right, 2 back-to-back now to talk about with Van. We're going to talk about The Last Rider in a moment. First, though, let's start with The Super 8 Years. Is this a biopic?
It kind of is and it isn't. I didn't realize until I sat down to watch this. This is only an hour and 3 minutes long.
Bonus.
And, well, you know how I feel about lengthy run times, so this should be right up my alley. It wasn't. I'm not going to bury the lead on that one. It wasn't. So this is from author Annie Ernaux, who won the, was it a Golden Lion at Cannes last year for, what was the film now? It was for Happening, I think it was for. Yeah, it was for Happening, for the adaptation of Happening. And the way this works is, in the 70s and 80s, her husband acquired a Super 8 camera. They documented all of their family trips, and she took, being the great big lefty that she is/was as well, all of this ties into certain elements of political change that are going on in the world, and journeys that she took to far out places such as literally Cold War era Moscow. So, all the Happening vacation spots. Yeah, exactly. Your reaction speaks volumes there. Yeah. So she's put this together with her son as well, who we get to see through the archival footage, literally as he's growing up, but obviously he's old enough now to have put this together. And what you've got is a very cut and dry art piece. Put it this way, I mean, there's a glowing review of this in The Guardian, which tell you straight off the bat exactly what you're in for. This is very much one for people who wear tweed. And put it this way, anyone who knows who Annie Ernaux is off the top of their head, if you know who Annie Ernaux is, you're going to be the kind of person that's going to enjoy this.
Oh, Annie Ernaux.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There you go, Ernaux. But, yeah, no. So, there is a disconnect between this. There's attempts to there's sort of there's implications of deeper meaning, and I think that's meant to carry this. And the problem is that it's for the kind of people for whom the implication is enough, and there are implications again, very, very loose, very, very light implications that, on an artistic level, on a nuanced narrative, thematic level, that the events of the family and the deterioration of her marriage are meant to tie into world events, which is grandstanding to a level of narcissism I can't even fathom. I mean, I believe in the concept of canon events and fixed points in space and time and things like that, but I'm never arrogant enough to assume that my marriage can be tied into the fall of the Soviet Union. But that is absolutely the kind of gibberish you're going for here. And like I say, it's an hour and 3 minutes long, so it's kind of over before it begins, thankfully. But it's still not one I would recommend anyone enduring. It's in Curzon cinemas from today. Like I say, it's called The Super 8 Years by Annie Ernaux. And just say no would be my advice.
All right, well, let's move on then to something else completely different. In fact, the incredible story of the greatest...
Monty Python? No,
yes.
Something completely different.
Completely different. The incredible story of the greatest cycling race in history, The Last Rider.
Yeah, so do you know the story of Greg LeMond?
Bits and pieces, not the full picture.
I was the same. I was kind of the same. I didn't really know the Greg LeMond story. My mum's boyfriend's really into cycling and boasting. So he's kind of I should have talked to him about this. He would have probably been able to tell me everything there is to know about Greg LeMond. So I didn't know this. So Greg LeMond was the first non-European to win the Tour de France in, I want to say,
89.
Was it? No, 89 is his comeback. I think he won it three. I think he won it 3 times, and 89 is the third and most eventful time. So won it, and I want to say 81 or 83. Became the first non-European to win the PGA Tour. Win the Tour de France. PGA Tour. What am I on about? Bloody different sport. Win the Tour de France. Then goes home, starts preparing for, going back and winning it again, only to get shot because, well, he's an American. So, it's occupational hazard of being an American, apparently. Got accidentally shot in a hunting accident. Because just as tends to happen so often, he got shot by one of his friends in a hunting accident. Gets shot with, I think, 65 pellets.
Wow.
Has 65 pellets riddled through his body that he then has to come back from, goes back into cycling, only to then find himself not just on his second, but on his third, attempting to win his third Tour de France, finds himself in the literal race of his life when he goes up against Laurent Fignon. And the events of that will then, of course, lead to an infamous legacy whereby Greg LeMond becomes this outspoken advocate of anti-doping, which, of course, history tells us is going to put him at loggerheads with a certain other very famous American cyclist. This, incidentally, does not come into the movie, but we do kind of get told at the very end exactly kind of what came about. Have a listen. This is documenting the shooting.
We were scheduled to go back to Europe. The phone rang and they said my husband had been shot.
Bicycle racer Greg LeMond was hit by a shotgun blast while hunting in Sacramento.
I have 45 pellets throughout my body, one pressing right on the main artery. The cardiologist said, I don't know how you survived this. 100th of a millimeter more, you'd be dead. Everything that I dreamed of was taken away when I got shot. My team sent a letter, you're fired, go find another team.
He was depressed, and it was awful.
That's when I realized that I just need to get back into racing.
See, I'm a sucker for a really good documentary, despite what it's about. If it's a good documentary, I will get absorbed by it. I'm not a massive Tour de France fan. I've not really watched many of them. Is this done in a way that anyone who isn't interested in Greg or the Tour de France, that you could still be quite sucked in by it?
Sadly, not. And this is where I fell out with it. Now, as you just said, the moment you said, and I'm not a Tour de France fan, my first thought in my head is, oh, you're screwed, pal. Right. Now, the thing is, as I've just laid out the story of Greg LeMond to you in that preamble, that's the story of the man. And the story of the man would be more interesting than what we get here, which is more the story of that third Tour de France. Like, that's the bulk of the runtime here. And I found it too dry. I found it too involved with the ins and outs of that particular sport. And it's in much the same way that, look, nobody wants to watch a movie about, a documentary about Lance Armstrong, for instance, that's about one specific race, that's about specific racing. If you're watching one about, Lance Armstrong, you want it to be about Lance Armstrong. And it's the same exact thing with Greg LeMond. I mean, the man's name is legendary for the literal bicycle itself. I mean, the man is known for, his name on bicycles, for, touting technology, for new forms of technology for cycling. I think he was the first man to popularize triathlon handlebars, if memory serves. And there are things like that just don't come up in the story. You think, actually, I would really much rather have seen that. I would much rather have had a biographical documentary than what really feels like a very, very dry documentary about the Tour de France. About not even the Tour de France, a specific year of Tour de France. Then it does feel like you get preamble that's, the first time he won, and then he got shot, and then, and like his second Tour de France really just feel like it just breezes by. And then you spend the bulk of the movie in what seems to be the third Tour de France, in the 89 one. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work on a level whereby, as you yourself sort of demonstrate, if you are not a Tour de France fanatic, you're not going to care about this. You're really not. They breeze by too quickly with the biographical stuff. I mean, the getting shot seems like it should necessitate more of an insight, more exploration than what we get. And I found that just really wasteful. It's written and directed for the screen by Alex Holmes, who's generally more of a TV director. He directed Maiden, but I know him primarily for having directed House of Saddam about 10 years ago. The Saddam Hussein family miniseries, as it were, which I quite enjoyed. I remember trying to get my dad to watch that, and he refused because that would have required joy. But no. And I just found this an absolute waste.
It sounds to me, from what you said, it sounds to me like the equivalent would be doing an amazing documentary on the biggest rock band Queen, but focusing on how their stage was set up.
Kind of like that, yeah. It is like that. It's like, here's a documentary about Freddie Mercury, but we're going to talk about one specific gig he did. And I really don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a Queen documentary, but it's all about Live Aid. You know, it's like, it's not really about Queen then, is it? It's about Live Aid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not really The Last Rider, it's this rider's last race. You know what I mean? It's, you know,
well,
missed opportunity.
If you want to go and watch it, you can, because it is in cinemas from today. Just look for The Last Rider. All right, we've got one last ride. We're going to talk about a movie.
A ride.
It really is a ride. I've seen this. Van's seen this. You're going to want to see this. Extraction 2 in a second. Stay there. Hello and welcome back. For one last ride, we have one movie left to talk about. You can watch this right now. In fact, you've been able to watch this for the last week, I believe. Extraction 2. What a film. Oh, sorry, I need to bury the lead. I've given it away already. But I've seen it. Van's seen it. What did you think? I don't even need to ask you that. I already know.
I bloody loved it, sir. Oh, my God. Okay, so it's worth noting, I had not watched Extraction 1 before this came out, so I watched both back to back, and I watched about half of Extraction when it first came out in 2020, and I thought, it's fine. It's a bit throwaway and forgettable, a bit of a direct-to-DVD kind of a thing. And the big selling point of it was that it had been made by Sam Hargrave, former stuntman Sam Hargrave had made the movie. And in much the same way that we celebrate John Wick for, it's the former stuntman now gets to direct the stunt-driven movie. You thought, oh, okay, cool, another stuntman doing that. So we're in the John Wick mold. Great. This series, of course, stars Chris Hemsworth as the brilliantly named Tyler Rake. Because if you're going to name an action movie character, Tyler Rake is what you name him, sir. Right, so this time around, again, script written by Joe and Anthony Russo, the directors of Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, Captain America Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, etc. It's Community episodes, etc. Right. Second movie. The first one took place in Dhaka in Bangladesh. This one takes place in... Is it a Soviet gulag? Is it? I'm trying to remember. It's Ukraine.
Do you know? I think it was Ukraine.
Is it the Ukraine, Siberia? It's like a Soviet prison, right? So the idea is Tyler Rake, having survived the events of the first movie, is nursing himself back to health. He's gone to a cabin in Switzerland to chop some wood with his arm in a sling because he's one of those guys who can literally one-armed chop down trees. And then one day Idris Elba shows up at his door and says, "Hey, you're the toughest badass that ever lived, but we've got a mutual friend who's your ex-wife," and who we'd heard mentioned of in the first movie, and her sister, she's married to this, this big badass criminal, and he's locked up in a Soviet gulag-like prison, one of those where they get to take their families into the prison with them, like the wife and kids are in the prison with the crime lord. However, she wants to escape. Will you go into the prison and bust them out for us? And he says, sure, for money, because that's his whole bag, mercenary for hire. And that's it. He does, but no sooner has he entered into the prison than Big Daddy Crime Lord catches wind of what's going on. They find themselves in the middle of a prison riot, and said Crime Lord is killed in the middle of it. Tyler Rake has to kill the guy in order to get out. Only for said Crime Lord's brother, I think that who was also his partner in crime, to set out on a vendetta. He wants Tyler Rake's head and his family back. Have a listen. This is Idris Elba pitching our boy, and I'll never get tired of saying the name, our boy Tyler Rake.
You lost, mate. Are you Rake? I asked you first.
Yeah, but my answer depends on yours. See, if you are Rake, then you are the myth of Mumbai, the legend that got the journalists out of Congo, that took down the two gangs to save the mayor of Rio. I mean, the honor would be all mine, but I have to say, mate, you're not living up to the hype. What happened? You fall off a bridge?
How about you put my cup down, hop in your car, off?
It's not very nice, is it? Not when we've got a mutual friend who's offered you a job.
I don't have any friends.
Yeah, well, this particular individual seems to think you're the only one that can do it. Me? I'm not so convinced. Can you even pull the trigger like that?
I had a lot of fun watching this movie.
Right.
I mean, I will warn you, it's graphic in a great way. Within the first 10 minutes, a pitchfork went straight through someone's throat.
Isn't that the opening scene? Isn't that not literally the opening scene? We meet the crime lord's brother for the first time.
I was like, I'm going to love this movie. Honestly, I would say there's probably 5 minutes of this movie that isn't an action-packed fight scene.
Well, that's the weird thing, because basically the movie centers around 3 set pieces. There are 3 action set pieces in this. But they are big. They are big action sequences. So the very first one, though, is what we were all talking about with this one. So the first movie contained what we call a wanna that literally lasted just a couple of minutes, like a 2-minute long wanna that took place during a car chase sequence, an unbroken take, using digital technology to sort of, stitch the edit together. So they use 1917 style, they use door frames and things like that to like stitch the different shots together. Now, given that everybody loved that scene back in 2020, evidently this time around they thought, tell you what, hold my beer, let's see what we can do. And they have gone for a 21-minute long unbroken 4-location wanna. Literally spans 4 locations. The entire mission that Tyler Rake goes on is one long action sequence, and it's unbroken. And it's so engrossing that you don't even notice that at one point he's literally dodging gunfire from a helicopter by seeking cover behind a ladder. Like, that's the level of brilliance of this. You don't even notice that it's that stupid he's hiding behind a ladder for cover. It's that good. It's brilliant. And when you say about the action, at one point in the middle of that one, there's a prison riot in the middle of the wanna, and Tyler Rake, Chris Hemsworth, this is Raid level action.
Yeah.
Like Raid level action. I mean, he's on fire at one point. He's on fire just punching a dude in the face over and over again. And you don't question it because the movie's that fun and that just unrelentingly, unflinchingly badass that you just go with it. And like I said, and then you get to action sequence number 2, which is on the glass ledge of a skyscraper, and just defies all logic. And action 3 is your final fight. It's brilliant. It's brainless, of course. It's brainless. No one's going to claim that this is, high art or that this is, up there with the best of Paul Thomas Anderson or anything like that. It's brainless, but oh my god, is it fun? So much fun. Like, I genuinely think like this is what Chris Hemsworth needs to be doing now. Like Thor, the Thor franchise is done. Like, I'm sure he'll come back in the next Avengers movie or something, but we don't need another Thor. Like, nobody needs them. We need 9 of these is what we need. We need a Fast and Furious length Extraction series. I will watch 10 of these. And as long as they're keeping this standard up with, the fight choreography, with the action sequences, with just the way that this is put together, the way it looks and feels, the punchiness, the editing of it, brilliant. Now, I will single out as well Goshifta Farahani as his sidekick, because she was his handler in the first one, and now she's actually in the action. Is it Kim? I want to say Nick. She was his handler in the first one, but now she's properly in the action and kind of gets a revenge mission of her own. And she's great in it. I thought she was really good. I also quite liked Olga Kurylenko as the ex-wife character who had been spoken of in the first movie, but actually gets to be a character here as well. We get to flesh out more of the actual Tyler Rake character. And it's cliched action movie hero backstory. But it's good fun. It works. Everybody knows the assignment. And everybody is just pitching this up to 11. Top of their game work. I bloody love this. This is on Netflix now. I mean, you'd recommend this, wouldn't you? Any favorite bits?
Highly recommend it. My favorite bit, when he had the knife. I didn't know you could do that many things with the knife. I honestly didn't. I was just like, what? Wow. Oh my goodness. That is
Yes.
incredible. I mean, if I was to compare the action in this movie to sitting at a bar and sipping on a shot of Sambuca, this is pouring the bottle of Sambuca down your throat in one go.
It really is. It's like 21-minute, unbroken, 4-location one.
How did they even film that? I don't even know how they filmed it.
Well, I mean, obviously it's been filmed and they've stitched it together in the edit, and what they've done is, like I say, with 1917, they've just stitched it together using door frames for the transition wipes and things like that.
So clever.
It's doable. It is very clever. It's been very, very well done. Like I say, I mean, he's punching dudes while he's on fire. It's so good. So good. If you've not seen the first one, watch Extraction 2, because it's the second best action movie of this year after John Wick 4. And which, same kind of pitch. That's another movie where, it's a stuntman making the stunt movie. And yeah, clearly this is a recipe for success. Make more of these, please. The third one has already been greenlit. Hemsworth and Sam Hargrave are both back.
Yes!
So we are getting a third one. I hope they call it 3 Extraction, something like that. I absolutely bloody love this. It's just it's the most fun I've had of the movie in a long, long time. One of the most fun movies I found this year, definitely. But just
everyone I work with will tell you this. I rarely go to work and recommend movies. I'm just not that kind of guy. Today, when I went into work, I was telling everybody, it's on Netflix. You've got to watch Extraction 2. It is amazing. It's your weekend movie. Make sure you make an effort to watch it.
You were texting me during this. You were texting literally WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is awesome.
Yeah, I was. Highly recommended for me, and quite clearly highly recommended from Van as well. Extraction 2 on Netflix. When you get a couple of hours, you will not regret it.
No.
No, definitely not. Now, next week, what are we going to be talking about? Hello Bookstore.
Yes, we've got a documentary Hello Bookstore next week. We've got the new DreamWorks movie Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, next week. My Extinction. We've also got Mother and Son. But, of course, all of this pales in comparison to the return of the Man in the Hat. The man with the bullwhip and the fedora is gracing our screens for the first time in 15 years. Since, aliens, since he literally encountered aliens in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones is back in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I had the pleasure of seeing it this week. I'm not embargoed on it, so I'm happy to say that Indiana Jones has not been this good in 34 years.
Wow.
I had an absolute ball with this. I'm looking forward to telling you all about it next week. We're going to have so much fun talking about Indiana Jones. Again, just you're gonna revisit a lot of your childhood, Mr. Ball, I promise.
I cannot wait to hear what you thought of that, actually. But I won't spoil it by asking you off the mic. I will wait until we talk about it next week. But that is all we've got time for this week on Off Screen. We will be back next week to talk about all of those movies. Until then, I've been Adam Ball.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall return.